Hey there, it's Matthew here once again for another episode of Phoenix Rising Live. And, this is an interesting episode here that we'll be experiencing together. Episode number 43. And 43 is my late fiancée Gail's magic number. So there's significance in that. And most of these titles, I only come to mind with them about a minute before I begin. Generally, as I'm just writing it up, then something comes to my mind. And this one may be challenging for some to get into the vibration of. And there could be a lot of, not controversy necessarily, but skepticism, doubt, disbelief. I mean, everyone's going to have some level of resistance to the idea in some way, shape, or form. Not everyone, but probably 99.999% of human beings on the planet. And the idea is that nothing in the world can hurt you. And this is mostly inspired by Gail's transition from this physical life to the non-physical realm, where her consciousness now resides, always has, always will, for all eternity. Of course, in this version of reality, she's not physically present, but very much spiritually present. And, in looking in the final days of her life, for example, she may have undergone a lot of physical pain, but she'd really triumphed over most of the fear of that experience, because when she was initially diagnosed with breast cancer and went through that process, that's when most of the fear came up, and she dealt with it. And by the time this terminal diagnosis came, it was just acceptance. There was just a level of peace. And it's interesting too, these labels that we use, we call it cancer and it's terminal. And, these are just labels that the industry has come up with, of course. So one of the ideas of understanding that nothing in the world can hurt you is removing the labels from your experience. It doesn't even have to be labeled as pain. It doesn't even have to be labeled as hurt. It's simply an experience. Everything in the world is an experience. That's a fair thing to say. We still need to use language to communicate our ideas with one another, but it's a matter of using a higher efficacy of language. Some people don't want to do that. Some people are very much stuck in their paradigms of the world, and that things need to be in a certain order, in a certain way, because they have such a large amount of experience, such a variety of knowledge and education. So it must be this way. And you can feel that energy. It's dense, it's limiting. I would encourage you not to spend a lot of time with people like that, because that will promote the idea of labels. That'll promote the idea of your suffering. That'll promote the idea of things not working out to your full creative potential, in most cases. So when you start removing these labels, you recognize that there's a greater level of freedom within the experience itself. And so that was Gail's ultimate discovery, is that it wasn't cancer that was hurting her body. It wasn't even her own mind that was hurting her body. In fact, what was happening was exactly the experience that she needed to have happen in her life at this time. And it was her time to go. And when there's just an acceptance of this is the experience rather than labeling it, what's the point of labeling? Does that give you some level of control, maybe perceived control? Like, okay, now I know what this is. Now I can do something about it. That works for some people some of the time, but not the ultimate freedom. So if you're in this realm of fifth dimensional consciousness, if you're in this realm of higher awareness and greater growth, you really have to dissociate from the heavier vibrations. And you're not running away from them or avoiding them. You're just not tolerating them. If you recognize something's not working for you, don't spend a lot of time with it. And if you're in a situation where that's in your environment a lot, well, what can you do to move beyond that? And sometimes you just are accepting where you are. So it's like, okay, well, this experience doesn't have to hurt me. It's just the experience. And I recognize it's a lower quality experience. It's a lower density. It's a lower vibration. So what? It'll pass eventually. Even if it's until I die, when I'm out of this body, I'll move on. So recognizing that there's no need to label experiences other than to just have the experience for what is. And then after the experience itself, you could describe this is what it was. But while it's happening, there's no point. Sure, we sometimes use labels to communicate more effectively to one another, but is it really more effective? Could we find a better way, a more efficient way, a more effective way to communicate? Because when you say cancer, for most of you watching, there's a whole definition, there's a whole trigger. Terminal cancer, death sentence. No. What does it mean? It means allopathic medicine. In Gail's case, we don't know what to do for you. We can ease your pain. That's about all we can do. But there's no known cure that we know of. But from her perspective now, it's simply that was her process to go through, to transition. And that's perfect. That's perfect because we're always going through a transition. In some respects, every experience that you're having is terminal because it's going to die. And then you're going to go on to the next experience and the next experience. That might seem a little bizarre, a little bit of a weird way to put it, but think about it. Every moment is dying. The last moment's dead. And now we're in the new moment. And so embracing the idea of death as part of life, embracing the idea of what you might label as pain as an experience of life. I'm not suggesting to go seek out these experiences. Obviously, use your discernment. But how do you get to the point where nothing in the world can hurt you is when you recognize it's here for you. You created it for yourself, for your well-being, for your forward momentum. Not to impede you, not to hold you down, not to beat yourself up. You don't create bad luck. There's no such thing as bad luck. Like, you don't create anything negative. And these ideas, these not beliefs, because belief implies that there's elements of it that may not be true. These facts of life, that everything is here to serve a positive purpose. Your people will challenge you on this. They'll challenge you on your ideas. They'll challenge you on your self-expression because they think things need to be in a certain order, in a certain way. But that's not true. That's their perspective. It's true for them in that respect. They're not wrong. But if it's not vibing with you, then it's not right for you. So just let that stuff go. There's no reason to be locked into any thought system. That's the purpose. That's the mastery, is to let go of all thought systems. Let go of the vibrations that aren't serving you. Rather than trying to figure out why it doesn't serve you, you can have reflection. I had an experience today where I was on a call with someone and didn't seem to be very receptive to my ideas. Wasn't putting them down necessarily, but energetically there wasn't a lot of open space. And there was a lot of skepticism. And not necessarily a healthy skepticism, but a skepticism that wasn't ultra negative, but it wasn't healthy. It was kind of in between. And, I'm in this call and halfway through, I get this like sadness. I just felt like breaking down and crying, like this person's fully not accepting, my vibration in a sense. That was my interpretation, not necessarily the reality, but it brings up this experience for me. And then post-experience, reflecting on it. What was this about? What's the energy here? Why was this person responding to me this way? Why was I responding to them this way? Then I recognized, oh, this is a person from my past. And most of the people from my past, 99% of them, aren't fitting into my present. So it's just a reflective reminder to say, hey, that vibration's not fitting into where I am now. So I don't need to look into the past. And every time you have an experience like that and you reflect on it and you grow from it and you learn from it, then you recognize what energy is most compatible with me. And that's when you really start to have more fun, when you can see it ahead of time. And there may be times where you don't see it and then now it's in front of you and now it's making you all uncomfortable. And it's like, hey, you just deal with it. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to harm you. You're going to get through it. You're going to process it. And then you'll move on and you'll learn from it and you won't duplicate it. There's no reason to duplicate these things. I mean, that's an underlying fear for a lot of people too, is like, I don't want this experience now because I don't want it again. Well, just because you're having it now doesn't mean you're going to have it again. There's an idea in NLP, it says how you do one thing is how you do all things. I mean, it depends on what context you're using that. If you're using everything as a learning experience, then you're absolutely right. Just use it as a learning experience and you'll never repeat it. Well, what if I don't learn my lessons? What if I don't reflect? Well, it's an automatic process anyway. You're going to learn what you need to learn from it. All of life is an automatic process. Life is happening. Even when you're resisting it, it's still happening. It's still flowing. Your resistance is part of the flow. Nothing's separate. That's why nothing can hurt you, because it's all a part of you. Can you create the experience when you're in pain or the experience of you suffering? Sure. But if you're the one creating the experience and you can awaken to that as a fact more and more, more and more, more and more, then why would you repeat it? If you're with someone and they're not lighting you up, there's not natural synergy, they're not seeing the advantages and the opportunities and how you can potentially collaborate. What's the point? Why do you have that person in your life? You don't have to be disrespectful towards them, but you can simply say, hey, it's probably not something I ever need to experience again. And if there's not 100% synergy, if someone's not totally in it to win it with you, if they're not totally willing to put in the effort to build the relationship, to support what you're doing in the same way that you're willing to support them, assuming that you're 100% in it, assuming that you're coming from your heart, then why explore that? Because there's a million other people out there that are going to give you 100%. But if you're wasting your time on the people that aren't, you're not opening the door to the people that will. And simultaneously, you always want to use your discernment with that. Because maybe someone's not in a place today to understand where you're coming from, but maybe in 6 months from now, or 12 months from now, or 2 years from now, maybe they'll get on board with it. If you're an early adopter, if you're on the leading edge, like we're on the leading edge of this idea, nothing in the world can hurt you. Right? Most people will be like, what are you talking about? There's a lot of things to fear out there. If I drink cyanide, that's going to hurt me. Well, why the hell would you drink cyanide? Right? People take these things just inappropriately, but it's because it triggers them at such a deep level and they don't know how else to respond. Their mind doesn't go into a place of like acceptance and saying, oh yeah, let's explore this. It's like resistance. And then they want to make you wrong. And sometimes that's done very subtle. And sometimes it's more extreme, like the example I just gave, right? Like I'm not suggesting that you would ever do anything to put yourself in harm's way. That would be dumb. That's not common sense, right? But if you follow common sense, you follow the flow, you recognize that every experience is here for your benefit, even if you're uncomfortable, that's not pain, that's not hurt, that's not suffering. That's just a new experience, a different experience that you're processing, because you're not going to be uncomfortable forever. So take it to heart. Really embrace these words, embrace these ideas, feel the vibration of what I've shared, the energy of it. Everything allows you to become stronger. It's not that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That seems ridiculous. Where do these phrases come from? This is this human conflict, right? The experiences allow you to grow. No experience can really kill you. Even if your body dies, you go on to the next experience. When you realize you're immortal, you're eternal, you always exist, that fear begins to diminish more and more, more and more, more and more. Because you recognize this life is for me. This life is for my growth. And I set it up. I'm the writer. I'm the architect. I'm the vibrational architect of this reality that I'm perceiving right now. And you just accept it for what it is, like it's your creation. If you have a young child and they draw something with crayons and they bring it to you, you accept it for what it is. You don't say, well, you could have shaded this better, or I can't even tell, is that supposed to be a person or is that some kind of animal? You don't critique it. You accept it is what it is. This is what it is. And sometimes there's a point in time with other circumstances to critique, to give constructive feedback. But it's still coming from a place of acceptance. And if there's something that you can do to change your life that's common sense, that's obvious, then obviously you do that. So this is why nothing in the world can hurt you, is because the world came from you. It's a projection of your mind. It's a projection of consciousness. Not just the singular individual human you, but the total you, including the higher self, which is connected to the soul, which is connected to the oversoul, which is connected to its own overseer, and beyond and beyond and beyond, all the way into oneness, pure oneness. So just keep things in context. These aren't metaphysical, spiritual ideas. This is just reality, right? That's another label. Oh, that's spiritual. Well, what does that mean? What are you saying? Right? It's a fact that, like, when I breathe, its oxygen supplies my body with life. So there's no label for that. I breathe in, I breathe out, I live. It's the same thing with what I just described about the structure of our spiritual nature. It's not a belief, it's a reality. When it becomes a reality for you, that's when you recognize that the world can't hurt you because it's your creation. It's not a belief that if I breathe in, I'm supplied with oxygen. It's a fact. So distinguish between fact and belief. And you might think, well, I don't really know how this whole thing works. So what intuitively makes sense to you? What can you see in your mind's eye? what's flowing through your imagination. That stuff's real. Whether it's an exact depiction of what it is or not, who cares? Even when you're looking out in the world, your perceptions are still distorted to some degree. Everything's distorted to some degree. And then obviously the more clarity you bring, the more source power you bring, the more clarity you have. So just allow it to be what it is in the moment. And if it transforms into a deeper understanding, a deeper recognition over time, then allow it. But it's real. Heaven is real. Source power is real. Spirit is real. If you have extrasensory perceptions, it's real. If you see things that people don't see, it's real. Everything in this world is real and it's not. It's both. Just like the dream you had last night. When you're having the experience, it seemed real. Now, it doesn't necessarily seem as real, but you can still take away from that as a growing experience if you decide to use it for that. Same as yesterday. Is yesterday real? It's not here anymore. But you can use it as a leverage for growth. So, allow yourself to grow. Allow yourself to prosper. Allow yourself to be immortal. Allow your power to be immutable, unmovable by anyone other than your own decision to make a movement forward in your life. And an exceptional, miraculous movement that you could make is joining me on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. There will be a time change happening on Sunday for part of the world, not all of the world. So keep that in mind. 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. Take note of the time differences. And join me. Join me for the Phoenix Rising Masterclass. We'll be taking ideas that I've just explained and weaving it into your life. Others don't need to understand it. They don't even need to accept it. Only you do. Who cares what other people think? If it doesn't align with you, then it's wrong for you. They're not wrong. It's not a judgment. They're just wrong for you. But you're right for you. There's no need to question that. So much love. See you on Sunday. See you on the next episode as well. And bye for now.